Oh fuck, I fucked up. What is up, BookTube? Welcome to 2020, but today we're going to still be looking back at 2019. I'm doing my favorite reads of the year. These are somewhat in a particular order. The top three are kind of nebulous, but everything else I think is pretty much like in order of least favorite to most favorite. But I gave all of these books 5 stars, and so I would wholeheartedly recommend all of them. Some of these I have review videos for, in which case I'll leave them linked up in the cards or down below, or a mixture of both. If I remember, I'll also leave links to all of the GOODREADS reviews I did for these, so you can read those if you want to watch a video. Do whatever it is you want to do. So starting off my list at number 10, I think I have a pretty surprising book. I think people would expect me to have put this a little bit higher than I wound up doing, and that was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This came out in May, and I read an arc of this, I want to say, in April. I got swept up in the book Twitter hype. It was one of the only NetGalley arcs that I actually got to this year, and I loved it. I loved it a lot, but as you can see, I didn't love it quite as much as some other reads. I think that it's just a matter of when I read it, because I read it so early on in the year, and I read all of these, I think, after I picked this one up. But if you haven't read it, this obviously details a relationship between the first son of the United States, Alex Claremont Diaz, and Henry. It's cute. It's told mostly from Alex's point of view. It's not a dual perspective. I do think that part of me wishes it was a dual perspective, or if I could get a novella. But you know, I love this book a whole lot. I went to the signing. I think I mention this every time I open, like I hold it up, but I went to the signing. It was great. That whole experience was beautiful. So I think there are a lot of positive, happy memories associated with this book, and that's also kind of why it's lower on the list. Like, yes, I enjoy the story, and I do think that as a fan of a chunky contemporary, particularly a new adult contemporary and a queer contemporary and a contemporary with a mixed race protagonist, like, all of those are things that I love and appreciate, but there's also just a lot of fond memories I have associated with it, and so I couldn't, like, a lot of the issues that other people have with this novel I just can't relate to. Coming in at number 9 on my list is Hello Girls by Britney Cavallaro and Emily Henry. This is a road trip narrative. This actually got a lot of mixed reviews when it came out. This was the first book by Britney Cavallaro that I read this year, and it chronicles the life of Winona and her friend. I honestly forget what her friend's name is, so maybe it shouldn't be on my end of the year best list, but their dynamic was something that I really appreciated. I really appreciated all of the weird shenanigans that those two got up to. And I wish that more people appreciated it, but I think that it was exactly the book I needed when I read it, and so I think that this is one of the situations where I'm like, the Goodreads review down in the description is going to do a much better job of talking about this than I am now, but just go in knowing that you're going to have to, like, allow yourself to embrace the kind of hijinks that happen in this book. And it's definitely not a book for everybody, but if you do embrace it, I think that you will be rewarded. Coming up next on my list is one of 2 graphic works, and this one is one that I picked up on a whim because it just looked too cute at Barnes & Noble. It is Check Please Volume 1, Hockey by Ngozi Ukazu, who is a black woman, I believe. Yes, here she is. You can see her picture. She is stunning. This is a book all about hockey. It is not a sport that I play or do anything with, but it is a sports graphic novel from our protagonist over here, Eric Biddle, who is a hockey player at a, like, sort of small-ish university. Their hockey team is okay, and yeah, so this one chronicles his freshman and sophomore years at Samuel University. It's all about him and his, like, video log and his hockey and bonding and his love of baking. And I think that this is literally what Fence wants to be, but just isn't. Like, it's queer, it's sport, it's graphic. Graphic in the terms, like, that's like the format. They're both graphic novels. But this one isn't as slow as Fence. And while this is also slow, and it's very slow burn in terms of the romance, I think that it worked for me. And Eric Biddle is like, this little boy right here owns my soul. Definitely one of my favorite characters that I got to read from in 2019. And I'm very much looking forward to the second volume. Coming in at number 7 on this list is the only adult novel, the only adult fantasy on this list, and that is Steel Crow Saga by Paul Kruger. The only reason I picked this up is because I think Melanie read the arc of this, and she mentioned it in a couple of videos, and it sounded like it was interesting. And, you know, Melanie and I don't always agree 100% on books, but it felt like something I at least wanted to try. So I bought it. I spent the $27 US minus the Barnes & Noble discount to pick this up, and honestly, I have not had a better time reading an adult fantasy novel than I did reading Steel Crow Saga. Not only is it a standalone work of fiction that I think could easily, like, the world building in this could, like, easily allow for another story with a completely different cast of characters that I would just be as invested in. But what the story was in this one, is told from 4 perspectives with an occasional 5th, about 2 sets of characters, like it's 4 perspectives, but they're traveling in like groups of 2, to stop a certain event from happening. And it's hella queer. It is hella Asian, all kinds of different Asian representation going on in this. Like I said in my standalone video review for this, it is very much Legend of Korra fantasy, but it is grounded. Like it's like the best high fantasy with an urban fantasy reading experience. It's very much Legends of Korra. I don't agree with like the Pokemon vibe, but I do appreciate the spirit packing that goes on and the animal companions element, but it's not Pokemon. But this one, if you love fantasy at all, and you have not read Steel Crow Saga, then I think you are doing yourself a massive disservice, because this was easily one of the best books that I had all year. So, just barely missing out on the top 10 is one of the books that I read in February, and one that I tried to make a video review for several times before I finally just gave up. And I didn't go ahead and ever do one. And that is Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi. And I fell in love with it. I think I picked it up just because it was February. It was a cutesy read. And I think that the relationship between Sam and Penny in this is honestly one of my favorite bookish relationships I've ever had the pleasure to read about. Part of me is very sad that the copy I read was from the library, because it meant that I didn't really get to annotate it. So maybe this coming February I'll do a reread. I think that I'm definitely in the first group of people. Like, when this was first coming around on BookTube, this was a pretty hyped book and people were really in favor of it. I think these days the opinions are pretty less favorable, but I think that I think it's valid to have a new adult coming of age romance with 2 unlikable people who are both sarcastic and cynical and not bubbly. I think that like non-bubbly people who are, you know, people you don't actively appreciate, they fall in love too. And I think that, you know, they got to be seen here. This was also, you know, signed by Mary H.K. Choi, and so I love it. I love it. Okay, we are now in the top 5, and I'm a little shook and shaken. I think that this is where we're gonna get into, I think, surprises. I don't think people thought that these books would be here, or that they would be where they are on the list if they did think I would put them here. But coming in at number 5 is a book that I honestly thought I was going to hate. I thought that I was going to like sit down and drag this book for all of the things that it didn't do as well as I wanted it to. And then by like the 3rd page, I was like, not even the 3rd page, but like the 3rd chapter, I was like, you know what? I don't want those things. I thought I wanted that, but what you're giving me, that's what I really want. And that book was American Royals by Katherine Mcgee. Again, this is another multiple point of view book. I think again we get 4, so you get Beatrice, who I'm assuming is the one on the cover. You get Beatrice, who is the first in line for the throne of the United States. You get her sister, Sam, Nina, their friend, Sam's friend more, and Daphne, who is a high-ranking, like, noblewoman who used to date Sam's twin brother Jefferson, but they've recently been on the rocks. And the scheming and the drama and the tropes were everything I didn't know that I needed in my life that I was missing. And I love it. After I read it, I know I read it like just before the Contemporary-a-thon, the full one in the fall, so I think it was in September. And so a lot of people picked it up during the Contemporary-a-thon, and I think that a lot of other people who picked it up also really enjoyed it. I don't think it's going to be on everyone's best of the year list. I don't know if it was like that good. It's not particularly hard-hitting. It is very much like cotton candy, but it hit me where I needed it to hit me, and I loved it, and it's here. I have a whole video review, so again, if you're interested and you didn't watch it, you'll be able to find my full-length thoughts in those. But yeah, I think, and the sequel is coming out fall of 2020, so I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm very much, at some point closer to the release date, I'm going to have to, like, maybe once there's an actual title, because it's still untitled as of now, I'm going to be in random houses, publicity email, like, I need that arc, please. NetGalley, where is it at? Coming in at number 4 was also a February read for me, and I'm kind of cheating with this one, but I do think that you have to read both of these things to get the full story, and I don't feel too bad because this is, it's graphic. It's a graphic novel. And so I have My Brother's Husband, Volume 1 and 2 by Gengoro Tegami. This is the story of a man named Mike, who is Canadian, whose husband had passed away, and so he goes to visit his husband's twin brother in Japan, and it chronicles him getting to know his niece and his brother's husband. Obviously, it's the name of the book. But his husband's twin is coming to terms with how he hadn't been outwardly homophobic to his brother, but he hadn't always supported him in the ways that he probably could have, and him grappling with that. And it was just the most moving, the most great relationship. Mike Flanagan, he deserves the whole world. I'm pretty sure that's his name. If that's not his name, I'm going to feel real stupid. But again, like, this is easily my favorite work of graphic fiction that I've ever read. I know that this was pretty popular around when I was reading it. I saw it on a couple people's TBRs was popping up, which was a little bit of a surprise to me because I had never heard of it. But I do think that some people read this for the first round this year. So what was that, like round 4 of the Contemporary-a-thon? Round 3? I don't know. So I think you can find some other people's thoughts and opinions on this, but it was so good. Gengoro Tegami, I would love to read his other work, but I can't check it out from the library because it's all very, very graphic, male manga. So if that's your thing, then I think you might like this man, but this was very much wholesome and family-friendly and just a really moving story. Here is where I think the true shocker is going to be, and this is also why I say the top 3 are pretty nebulous, because coming in at number 3, I have Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi, which, if you have followed me since the beginning of the year, since I went to Y'all West in May, and I got the ARC, which is back here on my shelf, this tabbed up bad boy. Both of these are signed and personalized. I'll just hold this up because I don't feel like picking up the book now. I have been repping this book since May for a long time. My Twitter handle was telling people to go pre-order this book. I pre-ordered 2 copies for myself because I wanted the book. And then I sent one to Heather, so Heather has a copy, and I have another copy over here under this hardcover of Red, White, and Royal Blue that Melanie sent me. Like, this is, I think, very much my, like, booktube brand book. Like, this is the book of my heart and soul. Pablo Neruda Rind is out here. Like, own, like, he is me, except I'm not a Korean Pakistani man. Like, I'm just not. I'm not. And I think that this book just hit in a way that only a Mary H.K. Choi book can hit. It's the best contemporary that I read this year. The other two on this list are not contemporary. But the story of Pablo, and I don't really view it as like a love story so much. It is very much like a coming of age story, very much like a slice of life story. And I think that it hits in a way that no other book hit for me this year. Which is why it's a little strange for me to have it at number 3. But honestly, like, the other two, they're there too. It's just, yeah. So I have, like I said, I have a whole video about this. I will leave it linked up in the cards. I have a massively long review that I wrote for Goodreads that I think goes over everything that I think you need to know about this. I know that there are some people out there who don't like this book. I won't talk about those people in this video, but I know that it's not a book for everyone, but I do think that it is a book that's worth a shot. Even if you didn't like Emergency Contact, I think that you should pick up Permanent Record because they are very different. Emergency Contact very much is a romance, and Permanent Record very much is not. Number 2 is a book that I do not own. I checked it out from the library, and so I don't have anything to hold up, so there'll be a picture right over here. And that was White Negroes, When Cornrows Were in Vogue, and Other Thoughts on Cultural Appropriation by Lauren Michelle Jackson. It was a really great work of nonfiction. It's just under 200 pages, and I really appreciated everything. I don't think that there was a lot of groundbreaking information. A lot of it, for me, was just thoughts or feelings that I had felt, but I didn't quite know how to verbalize. And so it was putting those thoughts and feelings into words, and it was just like making me feel seen in a whole new way. I do think that it is for more than just Black people. I think that if you are looking for really well-written nonfiction, if that's one of your goals for 2020, to pick up more nonfiction, I think that not only is it a short work, but it is an accessible work. I don't think that it reads too elevated or much like a textbook. And a lot of the information will be something that you're familiar with already. And so yeah, I definitely think that it is a book that you should check out, and it is my number 2 of the year. My number 1 book, which again, this whole top 3 is nebulous, is Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. Tomi Adeyemi, that sequel was on a whole nother level. And again, I think that I've seen some not so positive opinions on it. And I know there are some not so positive opinions about the first book in the series. Of all of the sequels I read this year, it just hit different. It was so good. I have a whole fucking video about this one, so I'm gonna leave that one linked up above for sure, because if you haven't read it, I'm actually really proud of that discussion. It is spoilery though, so I think that like the first 6 minutes you can watch, but after the first 6 minutes, don't. There's like a spoiler thing on screen, so like you'll know when the spoilers come. I think I edited it that way. But yeah, it just hit on a whole different level. Tomi Adeyemi is out here doing things that I think are great. She's not the only one out here doing this, of course. There are other authors. But it was on another level for me. And so I can't act like that didn't do it, and because it did it in a big way. So that is my top 10 best books of the year. I think that everyone at this point has already uploaded theirs. So if you don't have a channel, make sure you leave your favorite books down below. It doesn't have to be a top 10, you know, however you want to categorize it. Top 5, top 7, top 13, top 19, like however you do you. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked what you saw here, you can subscribe, like, comment, do whatever the fun YouTube-y thing that moves you to do. And I'll see you guys again here on Friday with another video. But until then, bye.